Hey guys, and welcome to another Schematics update. This time we want to talk about the Colonists. More specifically, we want to critique the Colonists, and for that I'm joined by Blind IRL and Jonty from Geekism. Hey guys.
Bleep bloop bleep, hello. That was my robot, hello.
That was like a lot more of an intro than I'm used to. Hi, Jonty from Geekism. How are you doing today?
Hello, Blind IRL.
So here's the deal. I and Jonty as well got code from Code by Fire, the developer of this game. Blind didn't, so Blind is doing the moderator role this time and asked us stupid or not so stupid questions about the Colonists.
We'll just go with mostly stupid. So let's start with the obvious question. What on earth is the Colonists?
So the Colonists is a settlement builder. I wouldn't go as far as saying city builder. Settlement builder very much in the style of some of the early Settlers games. The gameplay almost revolves around a conveyor belt mechanic, whereas the actual inhabitants of the dwelling don't sort of wander around and do jobs. They stick themselves to at least a piece of road, and the gameplay revolves around you moving required stuff through these roads to kind of make sure that you've got a good flow through of supplies to where they need to go.
So I get that from, like, you know, watching streams and videos and the trailers, but there's one thing that very much confuses me. Why is there robots building everything?
That's actually a very good question that the game never really answers, honestly.
Okay.
It kind of states that the robots want to be humans, so that's basically the only thing, if I didn't miss a whole bunch of story behind it.
Yeah, the lore of this game, if you can call it that, is about 3 paragraphs before you start level 1, and basically, yeah, that's it. The robots have been developed by humans, and they've got artificial intelligence, and they're very bright, and for some reason they've been made to run as their energy actually comes from things like sort of fish and wood and coal, and they realise that staying on Earth, they're only ever going to be sort of subjugated and used as slaves, so some of them battle together and fly off to the stars to find their own life. That kind of very loosely explains why you are running as robots and fishing fish up and mining coal and mining copper. I think in reality it's a cute graphical style, and I think it's probably easier to animate robots than it is to animate people. Personally, I would have gone for something more like WALL-E, the Pixar movie. These are robots sent out to set up civilizations ready for humans, but the humans are never coming.
Yeah.
That probably is a little bit negative, but I think the sort of melancholy idea of these robots always preparing for humans that never arrive would have been a more sensible way to explain why robots fishing up fish and making apple cider and things like that.
If you're cynical, you could say it was all planned to be humans, but they figured out it's more edgy to have robots because there are tons of games out there where you play as humans, but that's just, I think, part of the truth. It's kind of adorable to see these little robots.
The robots themselves are really well animated. They're very expressive, and they're actually really adorable.
Oh, yeah.
But it probably sounds really silly that we're picking up on something like this, and especially so early on in the video as well. But I know for a fact it's something that comes up a lot, to the point I remember when the game launched, the developers tweeted saying like, okay, so the game's going out and we're really happy that the game's out there for people, although we're not looking forward to all the comments saying why are robots do fishing and why are robots making cider. So they're well aware that it's something that, you know, is in contention a little bit with people who want to play the game.
Let's move on to the gameplay itself, right? So you mentioned that it's very similar to the Settlers. Like, I wonder, how does the actual building itself work? Like, how do the resource chains work? What kind of things are you going to be doing in like the actual construction?
So it's pretty much like city building 101, to be honest with you. You pick some buildings, you click where they're going to go, and then the stone and the wood that's needed gets sent towards them and they get built. The interesting thing I've noticed with this, that I've seen in a couple of games, is there isn't really much of a fail state other than you just building a badly run city, because your sort of centerpiece, which is the rocket that lands in the first place, the actual spaceship, will always slowly produce the level 1 energy capsules, which are basically like batteries that get used up, and also it'll slowly fabricate wood, and with that you can pretty much start at any point. So if you ever get to the point where you've completely run out of of trees nearby and stone nearby or whatever, you can always build watchtowers, which give you a little bit of space built into the fog of war, so you can go further into the island to find stuff. All you need is wood for that. But yeah, the premise is that you start off with simple wood structures, and then they can be turned into level 2 structures, level 3 structures, and each of these will help you get to the end goal, which in the campaign is usually to build a monument, which is kind of like a world monument, little statue of robots or whatever. But the monuments require copper, iron, sort of like, secondary, tertiary elements.
One thing sets the game more apart from other games in the genre is basically the path system, because in most of the other genres games, the people are free roaming around the area. They mostly use roads if you build them to go faster, but it's not required. In this case, you need roads for the robots to be there, and these roads are at least 3 tiles long, and I think the maximum is 7 or 8 tiles long, and you have one small robot stationed on the path, and it's going basically between waypoint A and B, and if there are resources or whatever on the end of the waypoints, they transport it to the other, and that's basically it. And these waypoints can get stuck if you have 4 resources, so no more resources get transported there unless one of the resources currently being on the waypoint gets transported to another one. So you have some sort of like traffic management in there as well.
To be honest with you, that sounded really complicated.
Yeah, I know.
But I think with a bit of footage on the video, it'll make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Like I said before, you are building a city, you are building houses and workshops and things like that. But as far as gameplay is concerned, you're better off thinking of it more like a conveyor belt game, something like Production Line or Factorio, something like that. It's more about moving resources around as opposed to moving AI characters around. The characters themselves all stand still near enough.
To me, it sounds very similar to the old Zeus and Pharaoh games in nature, the fact that they're stuck to the pathways, kind of, except that doesn't have any sort of waypoints. But speaking of pathways and waypoints, how's the AI's pathfinding?
Yeah, so I figured out that the AI is selecting its way by using the shortest route possible, which can lead to some problems, as I mentioned earlier, that waypoints can get stuck, and if the shortest route is stuck, nothing gets transported. You can turn off the waypoints for certain goods, so there's a workaround, but it's not like the AI says, well, my shortest route, there's a traffic jam basically, so I picked the second shortest route. That's not happening automatically, which needs a little bit more attention from your side to these small things. You have a notification on the top that says, yo, this waypoint is stuck. You really need to pay attention there.
One of the things I have noticed with this game is that because it kind of decides as the roads get put down which is the shortest route, that if you want to make changes to setup, it's actually quite tricky to do, especially if you're towards the edge of the sort of area that you've opened up using the watchtowers. On a recent playthrough I realized that I'd placed the fishing huts in a not very optimal position, and so to get rid of the fishing huts, I sort of got rid of them and then removed the watchtower, and then the whole area that the watchtower originally opened up became back, sort of took under the fog of war, and rather than just everything sort of not working for a bit, which I assumed it would, everything exploded. Everything that was removed out of the playable area just burnt up and was destroyed. So it was a real issue to kind of just move a little bit of your production 5 or 6 tiles across just to be able to get used to the most amount of space, because the islands that you play on, they're not very big. You do get quite early on, you get to a point where you really have to start thinking about where stuff goes and where that you're going to sort of spread into, especially with things like the sheep farms that produce meat and also the apple orchards that produce apples that then become cider. They use a very big area of land to fully sort of optimize their use. So you have to have like 50 sheep, which makes 50 squares of the map, and the apples require 10 sort of little farms of apples, which each contain 4 squares. That's 40 squares. So they take up a lot of room very quickly, and very quickly you start from just kind of having fun placing stuff down to really having to sort of push the brakes a little and think, wow, I really have to start to plan this out a little bit. And because it's quite tricky to go in and adjust it. It actually feels quite difficult sometimes, that once you've kind of flattened down, half of me thinks sometimes it might just be worth restarting the level completely as opposed to sort of changing how you're playing that level.
That plus you can only use fertile land for that. So if it's sand or if it's on a snow map, you can't build a sheep farm, or you can't build like corn or cows or whatever you want to build there that requires fertile land. So that's another technical layer there.
So talking about like depth and construction and the AI and everything, let's move on a little bit further. You mentioned upgrading stuff. You mentioned upgrading buildings. Is there a tech tree? Are we going to be unlocking technologies? How expansive is it? How deep does the upgrading line go?
It's not particularly deep. It seems that most buildings have 3 levels that they can be, and it does come under a tech tree that you sort of open up by unlocking construction 1, for instance. And then once that's ticked, you can do construction 2 and things like that. And usually they just require a certain amount of base resources to be sent to a workshop building. I don't know why, but I find it quite hard to follow. But I can't really put my finger on what it is about, but I really struggle to sometimes figure out what I've got to do next, what I need to do next. One thing I've noticed that a lot of the systems are all tied back into each other. So, for instance, it'll say something like, build an iron mine. But to build an iron mine, you have to have mines 2 unlocked, because mines 1 will only mine stone. So you go to do mines 2, but to have mines 2 unlocked, you need construction 1 and scaffolding 1 to be unlocked. So you go to unlock those, but to unlock those, you need a level 2 workshop, and to get a level 2, and it keeps finding its way back again. And what seems to be really simple tasks end up taking, well, I don't want to say an episode because I'm playing this game as a Let's Play on my channel. So, but sometimes a whole episode will be spent, a whole sort of 20-30 minutes play session will be spent just trying to get to this one end goal that isn't really an end goal. It's just the next sort of logical step that you need to do. So I don't think it's too in-depth. I think it's probably just needs a little bit of a tighten, just like, I don't know, just some creases need to be ironed out of it a little.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It's not very deep. I think it's somewhat complicated, but on the other hand, it isn't. So it's kind of family friendly as well. So you can give it like a 10-year-old the game and he will get it after some time, I guess. For experienced management player, it's not very overwhelming, I think.
Interesting.
For some reason, it doesn't feel very satisfying.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that's really important with tech trees or sort of research trees or talent trees, whatever you want to call them. It's got to feel satisfying when you unlock the next thing. And for some reason, it doesn't really do that for me in this game.
I agree, and I really agree on that point that I think if you manage to complete one campaign, it's not very satisfying as well. As you said earlier, for most parts you build a monument and then the camera moves around the monument and all your volleys are happy, but there is no sound that indicates, hey, you did it, good job. There's just a simple overlay saying, you did it in time X whatever.
Yeah, there's levels of completions there. I think it has like, bronze, silver and gold if you do it within a year or 2 years or 3 years or whatever.
If you achieve a goal or a milestone on the way to your monument, it could celebrate it a little bit more, so you have more satisfaction to reach the goal, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So it seems like the game either has some sort of pacing or polish issues, if I'm reading you correctly.
In some ways, it is very polished. Visual style, for instance, I think they've really got it down. It looks great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it just needs a little bit of a tweak in that. I think pacing is probably a good way of putting it, yeah.
So speaking of pacing, let's just talk about variety in general. What options of play do we have here? Do we have sandbox? Is it just campaign? Is there free play?
Yeah, there is a sandbox mode, but I haven't really played that, weirdly, because normally I'm a sandbox player, yeah. But to be honest with you, I played the tutorial, and that kind of leads on to the levels, the actual campaign levels, and the campaign levels has been easy enough that I've just like enjoyed playing through those. And usually I try and play games creatively if I can, as in sort of how they actually physically look, and there isn't that much variation here, so I've actually quite enjoyed playing the campaign and achieving goals. The campaign actually has an interesting thing that I haven't seen very often. It's there's about 10 levels altogether, I think. The first 3 are pretty standard, the first 1 being a full-on tutorial, and then level 2 and 3 each time bringing in new mechanics. But then at level 3 the actual campaign splits into 2. The one track you carry on playing basically just resource management, and again, it unlocks further things like boats and trains and things like that to find resources that are further away. But then the other path, the other fork of the campaign, brings in combat as a thing as well. So sort of rival robot factions that you have to deal with. And it's quite nice that it gives you the option as to whether or not you want to include combat in your gameplay, which is something I'm not seeing very often. I quite like that. I haven't actually played the combat side of things. I thought I'd go down the resource management routes instead. So maybe Adfo can talk a little bit about how the combat works.
Well, I mean, the combat is basically based around these watchtowers that you build. To be honest, I only played the first combat mission because I was like, yeah, it's not my jam either. But the way it works is you build your watchtowers, and you can only build your watchtowers on the edge of your territory. As soon as the watchtower has a robot in there, it expands the area, and that's basically how it works. You expand closer to your enemy, and you're trying to reach certain resources before your enemy does. And as soon as you have like a real border between you and your enemy, these small watchtowers try to shoot arrows or later down the line cannonballs at each other. And basically it all comes down if you can destroy the enemy watchtower quicker than he can destroy you. And as soon as the watchtower is destroyed, as Jonty said earlier, the territory gets marked as free territory, or in this case, your faction, and you can go in and push the next watchtower closer to your enemy faction. And then it's just up to destroying your enemy or capture the spaceship of your enemy within the radius of your closest watchtower. And that's basically how combat works. Obviously, there are several stages. At first, you have like your normal watchtowers, then you can apply arrows to your watchtowers. For that you need iron and wood, I think. On the next step you can build watchtowers level 2 with cannons later on, and for that you need other resources. So basically the whole resource management cycle thing starts all over again for watchtowers, and that's basically how war works in this game.
The idea that when a watchtower is removed, the stuff around it is destroyed makes more sense, knowing that's how the fighting works, I guess. So, at least that's kind of explained that to me a bit.
It kind of makes sense, because on the other hand, it doesn't really make sense, because let's say your enemy has like a copper mine on his side of his territory, and you destroy the watchtower, and the copper mine starts on fire, but you need the copper mine, so you could go in, obviously, and repair it. But I didn't figure out a way to save it.
Right.
You need to rebuild the mine, basically, so it's kind of stupid.
All right, so we already kind of talked about the visuals, but I'm just going to ask you this. How do you like them? Are they good? Are they bad? Is there any issues with the visuals? Things you'd like to point out?
I really like them. I think they're great, in fact. I think the game looks gorgeous. I am a bit of a sucker for cute games, and I think the visuals go a long way to relieving some of the issues I've got with it, to be honest. And one thing I will say this sounds like I'm rounding up, but I just want to point this out now. I know with these videos we can sometimes sound a little bit sort of derogatory. I'm actually really enjoying the game. I'm actually having a lot of fun with it. It's easy, it's quite just chill to play, and I think the visual adds a lot to that. It's just cute to see, and to the point where if you click on a robot in the road, he'll turn to the camera and wave at you. Every now and again they'll do little dances. If you finish a level, they'll all kind of put their hands in the air and do little cheers and things like that. It's very nicely animated. It's a very cute game. The smoke billows out the houses when they're working. There is a little bit of a jar between the whole medieval building structures and robots. They're stuck with that now, so you might as well run with it. But I think overall, I think the visuals I think it's great. I think it's a really, really cute game.
I totally agree.
All right, since we talked about the visuals, what do we think about the music and sound design? Is the music good? Am I going to be humming it later? Is it going to get annoying? Am I going to mute it?
I would say it's completely forgettable.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what the game sounds like at all. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know.
At least it's not annoying.
It's a very generic, electronic, minimalistic sound.
Minimalistic sound.
You can tell, I think, when music or sound development, at least, has been a bigger part of the game. If you look at something like Frostpunk, or Planet Coaster, I guess, the sound development has been a much bigger part of the overall development of the game. This has been that the game has been developed, and at the end they've gone, right, we need a couple of music tracks and we need some sound effects, because it's completely forgettable. That's fine though, you know. It does, like you say, it does exactly what it needs to. So yeah, like Adfo says, it's just sort of plinky plonky robots, electro music that's incredibly forgettable. It's not going to offend you in any way.
It's there. And if it's not there, you realize it's not there, but there are no recognizable tracks there.
This isn't the next Theme Hospital.
Yeah.
Probably all three of us could quite easily start singing Theme Hospital songs now, 20 years later. This isn't the next one of those.
So let's come up with a conclusion here, and your full thoughts on the entire game. We've kind of covered pretty much everything at this point, I think. So what do you think? Good, bad, recommended, yes, no, only for a specific crowd?
So are we in a full release yet, or is it still early access?
It's full release.
And how much is it?
In the UK, it is $22.99, I think. Same with dollars in the US, and in Canada, it's like $28.
No, I don't think it's worth it then, honestly. As much fun as I've had in it, I reckon 5 to 10 hours of gameplay max to kind of see everything and do everything you want to in the game. I don't think there's enough there to warrant a sort of long-term sandbox mode. It's very much built to be play for a couple of hours and get to the end goal of the monument or whatever it is you're aiming for. So it's difficult, isn't it? And I don't want to be that guy who says it, but it's difficult because I haven't paid for it, you know? So it is difficult to sometimes know whether or not I would be happy if I had have paid for it, you know. But honestly, I'm not sure there's enough there to warrant $20 when there's so much else out there that will give you a lot more for your money at the moment.
The biggest issue of the game is the content. There are 10 campaigns, which all are around 1 hour, maximum 2 hours if you're taking it very, very slow. So 20 hours maximum, and even if you play very slow, you're through the campaign. I haven't touched the sandbox mode either, but I can't imagine how the sandbox would give you tons of extra hours in a game. It's a nice little game. It plays nice. It looks nice. Don't get me wrong. I had fun playing it. There weren't any big issues I had with the game. Would I pay 22 euros or 23 euros for the game? Probably not. If there would be like a campaign, let's say, of 20 chapters, maybe. I don't think it will support Steam Workshop. At least I haven't seen anything about that, which could have fixed the content issue right now, but yeah.
Yeah, some sort of campaign creator could do a lot for it, I think. Yeah, some sort of map editor. And I know we spoke recently about the whole early access, is it really a thing anymore? But it kind of feels like a really polished little early access game at the moment. The basics are there, the foundations are there, but it just needs a bit more stuff.
Yeah.
Pick it up at 40% off.
Yeah, pick it up the summer sale next year. Yeah.
Okay, so wishlist this one, keep an eye on it, and pick it up when you see it on sale.
It's well worth a tenner.
There you go.
First of all, thanks Blind for asking not so stupid questions.
I tried to be good.
Thanks Jonty for giving stupid answers.
Jonty from Geekism.
Oh yeah, full titles today, full titles, yeah.
Thanks a lot to you guys out there watching this video. If you like this video, don't forget to smash hit the smash button, not smash the hit button, that's wrong. If you really enjoyed the video and want to do the extra step over to Coffee to buy our editor, add a coffee because he's stuck on a strange planet surrounded by cute but kind of strange little robots and really needs to buy a ticket back here to Earth to edit our next video. Please do so, it's very much appreciated. Anyway guys, thanks a lot for listening again. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.